What if I told you that the reason you don't feel more joy, more peace, or more confidence isn't because you need to think more positively? If you've been chasing happiness but still feel like something's missing, you're not alone. So many high performers spend their lives trying to avoid difficult emotions, not realizing that's the very thing keeping them stuck. Welcome back to the Higher Alignment Podcast. I'm Minty Lam, executive burnout coach, and I help high performers regulate their nervous systems so they can build success without sacrificing their health, relationships, or themselves. In this solo episode, we're talking about why the goal isn't to feel calm all the time. It's to build the capacity to experience all of life's emotions. I'll show you why avoiding anger and sadness actually blocks joy and peace, and I'll share practical ways to start releasing these emotions in a safe way. By the end of this episode, you'll understand why the emotions you've been avoiding may be the key to feeling the ones you've been chasing. Let's get into it. So I actually recently just recorded a new episode with Laura Larios, who's also another executive nervous system coach. I've had her on the show before, and so it's coming out next week, so make sure you go listen to it. But in the episode, she talked about how she used to think that the whole goal of what we do is to help people feel calm. But the goal actually is to give people the capacity to live a full life and to experience all the emotions of life. And I totally agreed with her. And I realized that I should make an episode on this because I think it's so important. Because when I start working with people, one of the first things we do is we go through setting goals. Okay. And I have 8 different categories in which they set goals in. And so there's a physical goal, but then there's a desired state and a desired emotion from said goal. So for example, um, physical is one of the categories. So people will often write, I want to lose 10 to 20 pounds. I want a 6-pack. I want to build more muscle. Okay, great. So that's the physical goal. But then I say, okay, now what is the desired state attached to that? Meaning, if you lose 10 pounds, if you get the 6-pack, how would that make you feel? And usually the answer is more confident, more energized, more comfortable in my body. So then what we're actually after is not the 6-pack or the number on the scale. We're after confidence. We're after feeling comfortable in our own body. We're after feeling energized. All right. And once I go through this list of 8 categories of people, I narrow it down to about 3 usually. And there's always a common theme. People want to feel more at peace. People want to feel more calm, more free, more energized, right? And so to Laura's point, yes, we want to feel all these good emotions, okay? We want to do them. But in order for us to do that, we also have to make space for what we call the negative emotions. And there really isn't positive or negative, they're just emotions, but the emotions that a lot of us stray away from, they're actually the key to being able to experience these good ones that we're after, okay? And when I start working with people, I explain this container. Your body is a container of energy, okay? And if you've been living in a way where you're just constantly inundated with stress, that bucket is going to be filled with anxiety and fear and worry and dread and maybe some anger and some grief as well. And when that bucket is full of that stuff, there's no space for the other things to come in. There's no space for joy. There's no space for love. There's no space for abundance or calm. There's no space for any of that. So if we want to start feeling more of these things, we first need to process and release the ones that are eating up all our energy and taking up all this space. Okay? If you want to feel more calm, we first need to deal with the anger. If you want to feel more joy, we first need to deal with the sadness. All right? And so that doesn't sound fun, right? That doesn't sound fun, but that's how we make space for these things, all right? So what I wanted to do today is just to give you some practical tools in order to do that, okay? Now, what I will say is a lot of us don't realize we're repressing these emotions, okay? We don't realize we're repressing our anger or our sadness or our grief. We just think we're just moving about life, right? And one thing I see people do is they bypass their emotions, meaning that they think if they talk about said anger or frustration or fear, it's somehow going to perpetuate it or make it worse, right? So you'll complain about something and then someone will go, okay, well just focus on the positive, focus on the positive. And there's some merit to that because like, yeah, if you're just constantly complaining and constantly focusing on the negative, like, yeah, that's not really a great place to be. It's going to be hard to think you can get yourself out of that hole. But also just being like a bypasser and just thinking everything's like almost like delusionally positive, I don't think is healthy either because what we're doing in that moment is we're reinforcing the fact that feeling fear or having anger or frustration is a bad thing. It's a natural part of the human emotions. It exists for a reason. And if we just only focus on the positive and we bypass all these other emotions, well, this is where we end up in this trap of getting stuck and not knowing how to express that side of ourselves and therefore, almost like rejecting and turning away the joy and the love that we want to feel. Okay, if you're an executive who's craving more clarity, happiness, and a sense of real inner peace in your day to day, make sure you hit follow so you never miss an episode. This show is here to help you lead, succeed, and actually feel good while doing it. And if something resonates today, give it a like and share it with someone else who could use a little bit more calm in their life too. So, the first point I'm trying to make here is there's no positive or negative emotions, they're just emotions, right? And again, if you find that you have a hard time feeling joy or peace or really bringing that into your life, it's probably because we haven't dealt with some of the other ones first, right? Now, where I see high achieving people really get stuck, okay, the two that really hold them up are anger and sadness. We don't want to cry and we don't want to lose our shit because we think if we do that, it makes us look weak, especially in the workplace, but even at home. If I cry or if I lose my temper, I look weak. I look like I can't handle it, right? Here's what I want to say about that. That belief system was ingrained in you from when you were a child, okay? More than likely, you had a caregiver who reinforced to you that it was not okay to have those emotions. It was not okay to get mad. It was not okay to be upset. And probably because they didn't know how to sit with those emotions either. And so then when you had them, they did something to put a lid on it, to get you away from it, to distract you. And so becoming an adult, that becomes your survival strategy. That becomes what you know. And so therefore, you lean the same way. I can't get angry. I can't get sad. It shows weakness. Okay. When we live in that space, we spend so much energy trying to avoid those things that we burn so much extra energy in the background that, again, our stress bucket fills up with not only repressing those emotions, but the energy to try and repress them. And therefore, again, we have no space to feel the joy and the love and the connection that we want. So my first advice to you, if you're in this state, is simple. You need to cry, you need to get mad. Okay. And we're going to talk about some practical steps to do this because I've had to do this for myself. Okay. Because it's not enough just to acknowledge it and to think it and to talk it through. It's a somatic experience in your body. These emotions, these traumas, these energies get trapped in our body. They get stored here. And so you can't just talk it out of your system. You can't just think it out of your system. You have to release it in a physical way. That's how the nervous system works, is through action. Okay. And so on a most basic level, if it comes down to grief, or sadness, it's tears. And if it comes down to being wronged or being doubted, it's anger. That's it, right? Now, I'm not saying you have to go back and relive the moments that made you feel this way. We don't have to do that. But what we do want to do is we want to create opportunities and safety in the body to release. We essentially want to exercise the skill of releasing these things, okay? So let's start with anger because I think this is actually the easier of the two for most people. And let's talk about reasons why we'd have repressed anger. Well, if someone did something to us in the past, and that doesn't have to be something big, like they stole your car or they beat you up. It could be um, your sibling sat where you wanted to sit at dinner and it made you a little angry. That could be um, your sibling again driving over your toy. Like, the reason I'm trying to point out childhood things is because we think these things aren't big deals as adults, but if they're angering to you as a child, then it's going to hold in the body. It could be, um, your um, your mom telling you you can't go out with your friends and you being angry about it. It could be, as an adult, a coworker sniping you on a deal or, talking crap about you behind your back. All these things have anger. And in some cases, it might be more traumatic things, like some pretty awful things happen to you when you're younger, even as an adult, right? These things very understandably can create anger within you. But when our parents go, shh, 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 it's not a big deal. Don't fight with your brother. Then now we're taught to repress it. And again, what happens? It gets stuck in the body. One of the biggest struggles for high achievers is they can't tell whether they're burnt out or just overly tired. That's why I created the High Performer Stress Assessment, which will assess exactly what your mind and body are struggling with and what you need to start feeling more balanced, grounded, and happy ASAP. It only takes 2 minutes to complete, and you can find the link in the show notes below. I actually have 2 things that I suggest to get started in releasing anger. One of them is voice notes. Okay. So when something angers you, what I want you to do is go open a voice note in your phone and unload. Unload. Swear, cuss out the person, do whatever you want, say whatever you want. Let it go in that voice note, okay? And what it's doing is it's exercising the release of the anger, and it's also reinforcing to the nervous system something new, which is we can be angry. We can be angry. It's okay to be angry. It's safe to feel this emotion. What the voice note does is it's very limited exposure for you, right? The step isn't going and unloading on that person. Maybe you want to, but for a lot of us, that feels too vulnerable. So if you unload into your phone, into a voice note, it's safe because there's no quote unquote repercussions or misinterpretations on the other end. It's just us exercising the skill. I had a client I suggested doing this. He did it a few times a week, and every time he said he felt way better after, because once he released into the voice note, he didn't have to think about it for days on end. He didn't have to replay the conversation. He didn't have to make sense of his emotions. Am I being too much? Am I not? He just had the honest reaction in the moment, got it out, deleted it, and then went about his day. Right? Again, so what that's doing is 2 things. It's allowing the body to release it, and it's also teaching the body that it's safe to do this. Okay. The second thing I would do when it comes to anger is physical release, is something where you can actually beat something up. Okay. Not a person, but one thing I did for me was I had a really bad breakup years ago, and it was just a very traumatic relationship. I went to a rage room, and I've never done that before, but I had to release all the anger that I had in that relationship because I was bypassing it. I was making excuses. I was doing all these things. So I went to a rage room and I just let it all out. And I had that that sledgehammer and I just went to town on whatever was in front of me, okay? Now again, it seems silly and fun, but when you have that pent-up anger, it's important. Now it doesn't have to be a rage room. It could be breaking a pencil when you're mad. It could be ripping papers. It could be maybe you got a punching bag and some gloves, right? You can do that. Like, you can release it in a safe way. But the important thing here is, again, to show the body that we can release this energy, we can express this emotion, and it's safe to get it out on these inanimate objects that aren't going to have any feedback from us. And guess what? The more you do that, the less likely you are now to have an angry outburst in the middle of a boardroom meeting where you don't want to have one. Or you're less likely to have an angry outburst on your spouse or your kids because you're getting it somewhere else, out somewhere else, right? The more you exercise this muscle, the faster the body releases, the more that bucket comes down and creates room for the good stuff. Okay. So, anger, two really easy ones: voice notes, and then in some type of physical release, whether it's, again, the punching bag, a rage room, ripping paper, breaking pencils, just something to expel that energy out of the body. Okay. Now, when it comes to sadness, I mean, guys, I don't think that really anything beats crying. I'm just gonna be honest with you, and you guys might be listening to this rolling your eyes like, "Minty, you just want me to cry?" Yeah, I do. And it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. Your body was designed to cry for a reason. I always refer to tears as detox of the emotions. Just like you sweat. If you go to the gym and you sweat, you don't go, "Why am I sweating? Oh my God, I shouldn't sweat." You go, "Oh, okay, my body's detoxing. I'm overheating. I'm getting out the toxins. Yeah, sweat. This is actually a good thing." We go in saunas for a reason to sweat. We know it's healing. It's the same thing with tears, right? Tears are detoxing of the emotion, right? But a lot of us, and I could imagine, especially men, don't feel safe necessarily releasing those tears in the moment of what's happening because maybe it's not a safe space to land, or we've been told for so long tears are bad, don't be sad, just suck it up and keep moving. So, my suggestion for you in that arena is to find things where you can activate those tears or have those moments. It could be watching a sad movie. One thing that I still helps me process the loss of my dad is when I see someone on TV and they're like walking their daughter down the aisle and I'm getting married soon. And every time I hear someone talking about that, I cry. Right. And I know that's helping me process the emotions of the grief and sadness I had from that particular event. Now, that's not the only time I cry, right? I cry about lots of stuff, to be honest. As my fiance, he just thinks I'm just a puddle. I'm crying all the time. But it's because I spent so many years not feeling safe enough to cry that now when it comes up, I don't stop it. If you're a high achiever, you probably feel the exhaustion that comes with always pushing and carrying the load. And here's the honest truth: burnout doesn't fix itself by working harder or pushing more. You're not meant to just survive your success. You're someone who leads with impact and depth and intention, and you deserve to feel calm and connected while doing it. So imagine showing up present for your work and your personal relationships, feeling calm and grounded instead of constantly stretched. If that's what you want, this is exactly what we do in the Higher Alignment program. Book your assessment call through the link in the show notes, and let's get you back to balance and back to feeling like yourself again. I just let it happen because I know if I stop it, I actually am doing more damage long term because I'm reinforcing to my body that it's not safe to do that. And then also that energy is getting trapped, right? I want to cry. I want to release all this stuff that I have to. And I actually met with a lady a couple months ago, and it was like an assessment call, but she's local and I know her personally. And so we met in person, and she was talking about just everything that's going on. And I talked to her about what I think I could help her with. And she said, "So what do you think is the first thing I need?" I said, "Honestly," I said, "I think you just need to go cry." I said, I'm not going to give you any things to go do or regulate or any homework. I said, "We just need to process this emotion that's very alive in your body right now first. And there's no rushing that process. So you need to cry and cry and cry until your body feels like it's processed it enough. It is not helpful to shut it down." Okay. So for you, if you know that maybe you haven't cried in a long time and you're like, "Minto, I don't even remember the last time I cried." Again, find safe arenas where you can do that. You don't have to relive the traumas that made the sadness or that brought it out from you. And you might not even know what some of them are, but find safe spaces where you can do it. And again, for me, it's a movie or it's certain music that makes me tear up, right? Just finding places where you can do that. And the more you allow yourself that space, again, the more the body can process it. The nervous system learns that it's safe to have these emotions. And again, that stress bucket starts to come down, right? Now we're emptying out the stress that's occupying that space, and we can create more space for the things that we actually want to feel more of: the joy, the calm, the freedom. Okay. Those two, I bet you most of us could do a little bit more of. I'm just being honest, especially high performing people where you are taking on stresses all day long and you are handling so much stuff. 9 times out of 10, you are wired like me to learn to get upset and to not cry. So you probably have decades of repressed sadness and anger. And so that doesn't go anywhere. You just start to feel the effects of it more once you get into your 30s and your 40s and your 50s. And that, is why a lot of us realize we're burned out by this time, is because it's not just the workload that's gotten to us, it's these repressed emotions that we haven't dealt with. And again, we're emotional beings for a reason. Connection is a biological need, love is a biological need. And so if we aren't getting access to the connection and love that we want, it's usually because we're blocking ourselves with a lot of anger and sadness beneath the surface. So it's not weak, it's not lame. And I'm also not saying you have to go do this in front of your team or your boardroom or in front of a bunch of people to heal. That's not the point. The point is first just creating safety within yourself to express these emotions, right? And I just gave you a couple examples of things you can do in the safety of your own presence. You don't have to have anyone else around that allow you to access them. But if you haven't done these things in a long time, I would make that a goal. Like, not how many times can I cry this week, but like, how can I create safety in my body to experience these things and to express these things that I've been repressing for so long? And I promise if you get better at doing that, your relationships will change because you'll be able to connect and be more present and more intimate and have really deep connection. You'll get better at leading because you're not carrying around all this heavy energy beneath the surface that doesn't have to do with your job. Maybe your job adds to it, but there's really foundational stuff underneath the surface. You're processing that, which is going to allow you to lead from a lighter, more energetic space. And then also your body, your physical health is going to be improved because again, you're not carrying all these weights around with you. This heavy burdened energy and emotions that are eating away with you. That's where autoimmune disease comes from, right? Repressed emotion. So when you release this stuff, you free yourself to be more connected, more loved, more healthy. This is how we welcome in the life that we want, how we welcome in more of those feelings. But we got to go through the messy stuff first. And the more you do that, the less messy it starts to feel. The next time you cry, it's not a big deal. The next time you have a little outburst, it's not a big deal because you know how to come back to baseline because your nervous system learned that it's safe to have these emotions. Again, the goal is not to be calm all the time. The goal is to be able to carry the emotions of life in whatever capacity they come to you. And the more you can do that, you live a more rich, a more full, a more energetic life because you're not cutting yourself up from these experiences and restricting yourself. You're allowing yourself to be fully human. And that is the most freeing space you can be in.